magic cryo capsule of nature, has an astounding ability to preserve antiquities. And worth digging into this frozen world to discover something absolutely stunning. Today we will reveal you 20 amazing riddles hiding in the ice, who still don't stop. Surprise and educate us. Be sure to watch until the very end. I promise it will be incredibly interesting. With you channel is Top Facts. Wish you pleasant viewing. Well, and of course drove away from Norway on the polar archipelago of Spitsbergen. Buried by a suspended permafrost mountain range is the frozen vault of life. Founded in 2008, Global Seed Vault developed to preserve crops from around the world in case of a global agricultural disaster. Extensive dungeons contain more than 1 million seed samples, representing more than 6,000 plant species from all over the world. These seeds are stored at a temperature of -18°C, in conditions guaranteeing their long safety. Vault purpose: prevent irreversible consequences of biodisasters and create a so-called backup. Available samples of agricultural crops, that is, if there are natural disasters and changes, climate, which will cause the extinction of entire species. Seeds from the vault can help revive them. This is a wonderful example. Human foresight, our commitment to biodiversity conservation, as well as our vital resource to ensure food security. Next generations. Trapped in the ice was a lot of tiny bubbles. It's kinda a time capsule. Where is the atmosphere of the Earth? What she was like a lot 1,000 years ago. Those bubbles are more likely to be in the drifting from Antarctica and Greenland ice flows, and is a storehouse of information about the past, in the history of climate. In every bubble, sample atmosphere from that time, when the air got caught in ice captivity. Analyzing its composition, scientists can determine the scale of education. Greenhouse gases, e.g. carbon dioxide and methane content, allows us to reconstruct the composition of the atmosphere of such a peculiar weather report. Age there as much as hundreds of years. You can identify periods of warming and cooling, helping confirm climate change theories throughout 1 million years, and also to form a forecast for the development of climate crisis, already launched by the hand of a person. It's a lake, buried thickness of Antarctic ice 800 meters deep. Used to be considered a dead zone. But in 2013, scientists managed to drill through a crust of ice and discover a thriving colony of microbes. Discovery of viable organisms in such extreme conditions expanded our understanding of the boundaries of life and death. These germs existed in absolute darkness, freezing temperature and huge pressure. They survived by getting energy from rock minerals. And you know such a discovery teases the prospect of that life is possible everywhere in the universe, where there are enough planets with similar severe climatic conditions. Deep beneath the Antarctic ice lies a hidden treasure, inviolable 1 million years. Lake East, Lake East. Buried under a 4-kilometer thickness of ice, this is one of the biggest flyby lakes on the planet. Discovery of the lake in the 90s of the 20th century became a century in popular research. Despite that, what is this one of the coldest places on the planet? Lake is not freezing because of the pressure of the ice mass over it and the heat which serves the hottest stove in the world. Guess this Earth core. This lake stays sealed tank for 15 up to 25 million years. You just think about it. And its contents for us anyway. The nature of another planet. This would be the most tidbit for scientists around the world. They have the opportunity to explore it fully. If there are living organisms in the lake, then they would have to adapt to a very cold environment, total darkness and tremendous pressure. Very similar to the analog of the extraterrestrial environment, the icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn, and sampling expeditions should have first prevent pollution of the virgin ecosystem from the outside. Microbes that live in the lake climate, they are extremely resistant to life in the most unsuitable conditions. So friends, Lake East is not just an icebound mystery, a potential guide in our exploration of life on and beneath the Earth. Glacier is beautiful. Freezer for artifacts from the past, which can also store ancient life forms in the form of bacteria and microbes. These microorganisms can survive in ice conservation for hundreds, 1,000, even 1 million years. Unboxing these life forms allows you to track stability and adaptability, all living organisms on the planet. Some of those germs were successful, regenerated in the laboratory, and gave reason to assume the existence of life in other icy worlds of the universe, on the planet Mars or the moons of Jupiter, Europe. So a frozen bacterium is not just a sample, earthly life, but also a potential guide to the discovery of its extraterrestrial forms. Icy expanses of the planet, and in particular permafrost, give us access to the frozen archive of biological history, which keeps organisms disappeared in the world. In this icy vault, scientists have discovered ancient viruses, some of which turned out to be older than all of humanity. These prehistoric viruses, for canned in ice per 1,000 and even 1 million years, do not look like any one virus existing today to scientists. A unique perspective. Study the evolution of viruses and gain valuable knowledge about how they interacted with their carriers. For example, in 2014, French researchers revived Pika virus, Siberia Kamikaze zombie virus, 30,000 years old. This giant virus, discovered in Siberia, and therefore so named, exceeds the size of all modern viruses. And still he's active on amoebas, although pretty harmless to humans. And this discovery highlights that frozen viruses have activity potential. Suddenly they can go back to the modern world, especially if the climate is changing or not throwing. That is, frozen viruses are not just leftovers, past of our planet, and potential participants in its future, challenging the health of humanity and scientific research. Plowing the ice, we discover remnants of megafauna of past millennia. Well, and a huge amount. Flora samples are also revealed to us from the ice chambers, Pleistocene era plant, an era that began around 31 million years ago and ended about 12,000 years ago. Here, by the way, one of the discoveries made in 2012. In an ice cube, Russian scientists have discovered plant flowers known as the accelerating shmalevka, or Phil Silenwol, growing in Siberia. These flowers are at least 32,000 years old, were found in an ice age squirrel hole, stored in permafrost in absolute freshness. Scientists have successfully cultivated plant from cells, getting thus the oldest plant material ever regenerated on our planet. And they were predictably similar to their modern counterparts, only a minor evolution. In tens of 1,000 years, this opening states incredible endurance of plants in extreme conditions and acts as a repository of incredibly valuable information, specimens of prehistoric flora. And besides sheds, the impact of climate change on evolution of the plant world. On the white plains of the Arctic, under a layer of ice and snow, lies ecosystem, once here thriving. Such a discovery was made on the island of LS World in Canada, where the remains were found under the ice. Petrified forest. What a stark contrast with barren icy desert. What is the Arctic today? These ancient leaves belong to the forest, which grew here from 3 to 5 million years ago, at a time when the Arctic was much warmer. Then now, the forest consisted of extensive mosses, of various species of flora. This forest is like a window in those days when the Arctic was a bright green plain. Yes, believe it was. A forest frog, which lives in Alaska, always raised a lot of questions from biologists because of its ability to survive being completely frozen. During the cold winter, when the temperature is always way below 0, these frogs are going into slow motion mode. Their heart stops beating, and ice is formed in the body, and in that state they survive for weeks. When the temperature goes up, the frog is defrosting. Heartbeat recovers and she jumps, as if nothing had happened. And here is such a unique ability allows forest frog to experience one of the most harsh winters on the planet. It is a high percentage glucose concentrations in organs and tissues, which acts as natural antifreeze and protects the body from death and damage. Scientists are studying the species with interest. Maybe he will give new ideas to conservation technologies, organs for transplantation. So, what about a regular Alaska frog? Possible to bring humanity closer. Revolutionary discoveries in medicine. And in Siberian communication, Yugagur, a magnificent specimen of the Ice Age was found. Steppe bison, which was frozen in time. In 2011, mummified remains of this in prehistoric buildings were found in ice, preserved with soft tissues. fur and internal organs. This was a very rare find. Steppe bison or bison priscus lived on Earth during from 2 million to 800,000 years ago. They were tighter and bigger than modern, and this beautifully preserved Yukagir bison. The study of animal physiology, which disappeared as a species 1,000 years ago, it became possible to obtain information not just about the last moment of his life, or even the last food he ate. What else was left in the stomach? This gives us the imprint of the Wednesday of that time, including food chains and ecosystem details of its inhabitants. In the snowy deserts of eastern Siberia, another grand defrost happened. In 2015, another ancient monster was found by a local hunter, soggy rhino. By the name of the found rhino was called Sasha, and probably the body was over 30,000 years old. Woly rhino. It's an extinct species from Ice Age who adapted to surviving the cold, thanks to the dense long coat, hole-to horns on the muzzle. It was the formidable beast of its era. Sasha, found almost intact and complete, became the best found specimens of its kind. Rhinoceros DNA study, advanced understanding of genetics, species of woolly rhino, and establish a relationship with modern species. Very deep in the permafrost of Siberia was discovered another prehistoric find mammoth. That's such a huge hairy elephant or hippo. Ask you, this is a representative of the species. Disappeared about 1,000 years ago. His body was found perfectly preserved in ice, like in the freezer. He, or rather she, was called Yuka. Body discovered by tusk hunters in 2010 near the coast of the Laptev Yuka Sea. And it was a female individual, became an extraordinary find, thanks to its beautiful preservation fur. Skin and even blood particles were in excellent condition, which gave scientists an unprecedented chance to learn a lot about her life in that era. The skin turned out to be gently pink. What was Yuki saying about her teenage years, who lived on the planet about 39,000 years ago? And marks of scratches and bites on the body talk about the story of survival in hard conditions of the ice continent. By dentists suggested that she was attacked by raptors, perhaps lions or wolves, and the cause of death of the mammoth served as a fall into a natural trap, split or hole, and there she just froze, laying here for 1,000 years. Cold temperature and glaciers of mountain areas, saved for us artifacts in Po. When our land, inhabited by the nearest extinct relatives of the human race, Neanderthals. Among these relics and needles are carved out of stone or bone, allowing us to look into everyday life survival techniques of these early humans. Neanderthal tools are found mostly in the European part, but finding such guns in the highlands became a real surprise. One of these locations is the Italian Alps. Where did ice and cold store those items? At least 40,000 years of tools in the form of violins and copies. Talk about more adaptability and resourcefulness of Neanderthals. What was considered? They could survive and hunt in the harsh mountain climate, and their ability to know invention was also above average. Their crafts were masterful and challenging. They possessed advanced skills for solving household problems and sophisticated knowledge of their habitat, as well as materials available for use. And more than that, through these tools trace the real connection with our own past. Neanderthals are our ancestors and represent that period in the evolution of mankind when survival directly depended on ability skillfully handle the environment. Hidden in the ice, these guns, silent witnesses of cruel times, can easily recreate pictures of the transferred Neanderthal trials. And in 1991, frozen in the Italian Alps, human body, an unusual find for tourists. So remains of this man, who lived here in the Copper Age, was about 5,000 years old. He was given the name Edsha by the name of the area, Edstal Alps. From this mummy, scientists managed to get information about human life in prehistoric times. Body, these clothes and tools remained in very good preservation, and it was possible to establish everything about diet, state of health, occupation, and even cause and circumstances of death. Tattoos on his body are the earliest in human history. The body itself is a gift from a time machine. Looking at this, we seem to be instantly transferred to our very distant past and present. How would you and I deal with those problems? And this dummy was made at the foot of some snowy and a very steep mountain, where people are forever trying to climb. Aim to let people understand in advance, climbing a mountain is a very dangerous activity, which forbid to engage in trained and inexperienced people. And in 1993, in the mountainous area of the Altai territory, archaeologists got an incredible find. They explored the burial mound and discovered the frozen remains of a young woman. She came from Pazyryk culture, living on the border of modern Mongolia, Russia and Kazakhstan about 2,300 years ago, and was buried with many rich artifacts, among which was a mirror, wooden comb and headdress, made of fabric and wood, body decorated with complex tattoos featuring mythological creatures, which indicates her high social status. By this mummy, we can judge what was the ancient Pazyryk culture. In the Andes at the top of the Liliaco volcano, which separates Argentina and Chile, in 1999, something amazing was discovered. 3 Inca mummies, among whom was a young girl named La Doncella, and 2 other children. Mummies that have been in ice for at least 500 years were in exceptional condition. There was even frozen blood in one of the hearts. Girls at the time of death was about 13-15 years old, and with her were fully preserved clothing, jewelry and items. Yes, it was clearly not an accident and not a burial. It was an offering sacrifice, cruel ritual of the Incas. The ill-fated company of Sir John Franklin, undertaken by him in 1845 with the aim of developing the Arctic, and the 4th in the life of a researcher, set out to outline the Northwest Passage across the North Arctic Ocean. Ended the expedition tragically. About the sailing ship, Revis and Terror trapped in Arctic ice, and the whole crew, 129 people, missing out, along with the corpse. They left us one of the most mysteries in the history of marine research. And after more than a century and a half, into per 1014 and 16, remains found in Canada's Arctic waters, wrecks of both ships, both well preserved, with gear pieces and artifacts, who ended up literally frozen in time. And what's left of them clearly told about the last moments of the ship's life, and tests, which finally fate sent their teams. Part of the historical puzzle solved, but many more questions remain unanswered. Pi-38 American single-seat fighter, used during World War II. In 1940 to a squadron of 6 aircraft of this type, and to Bright bombers B-16, were forced to make an emergency landing to the ice cap in Greenland due to harsh weather. The planes abandoned by their crew were actually buried under ice and snow and forgotten for decades. In 1988, a group of aviation enthusiasts took a mission to find these lost planes, the Missing Squadron. Using ground-based radar and other modern technologies, they managed to detect these planes at a depth of 80 meters under the ice. What helped deepen knowledge of the design of this model and conditions of its operation during the Second World War. This plane became a significant figure in history. Aviation, a symbol of the advancement and sacrifice of the entire military era. So why the ice around the abandoned plane began to pile up, soiling it so fast for whole decades. This has yet to be learned. Terrible disaster of the Second World War left an imprint in every corner of Europe, including snow-covered alpine peaks. For years, while the glaciers went down, they exposed the grim evidence of history. Frozen remains of soldiers are the result. That fatal operation, attack on Vimord, an attempt was made in Norway in 1943. Destroyed the Nazi manufacturing plant, heavy water component of atomic bomb. Treacherous natural conditions and treacherous terrain led to numerous casualties. Many soldiers missing in cold mountains. As that, how global warming caused the mystery of ice. They began to find more and more data remains. Absolutely everyone found. This is a forgotten chapter of military silent history. About that. What did they have to take out? And things were found along with the remains of the letter, ours, and even food. Personalize each soldier as a human being. First of all, everyone had their hopes, fears, and favorites. Who was waiting for them at home. These finds are also answers to hovering in question time, those families who never waited for their loved ones from the war and decades later had no knowledge of their fate. These soldiers frozen in the Alps are nothing else about the huge human casualties in this terrible war. As a reminder, and the ice sarcophagus carefully preserved this monument never forgave the world's evil.